All right, our next email comes from Caleb Massey, and he wonders, are modern games too easy? He says, I'm currently enrolled in a game design course, and we are learning a bit about balancing and creating flow in games. In our text, there is a section about how games need to achieve the perfect balance so that players do not feel frustrated by the difficulty or bored by the lack of challenge. This brings me to two questions. One, are games nowadays just too easy? I've heard Jonathan Blow say things about certain games not giving the player enough credit and holding their hand the whole time. That's his first question.
Okay. I'm tired of following things to waypoints to other waypoints to other waypoints.
Yeah.
That does tire me out.
We have a business interest in games being hard, so I just want to put that out there.
That's true. We got to put that out there.
Full
And the guys
disclosure.
did. Yeah.
We're all from a guides background, so when we write a strategy guide for a really hard game, it makes us really happy.
Yeah, it is. And I like hard games, although when you're trying to find the 299th collectible, that's a little frustrating.
That's the bad part about it.
But yeah, I mean,
but
no.
fun for summer break, right? If you just have one game.
You just put Brendan on it, and he'll say, found it.
Yep, he'll find it.
I don't wander around frustrating.
games.
Brendan's so good. He's so much better at his job than I am.
Probably the best video game player I've ever known, besides Billy Mitchell, who I don't know.
Yeah, so Brendan's amazing. But you get in, I don't want to be dropped in a map and just be completely lost and frustrated, but you can do good level design that doesn't require waypointing. I got so tired of something like Borderlands.
So we're talking about two separate things here. We're talking about the over-tutorialization of games, like the hand-holding and then games being too easy, which they can overlap, but they are separate.
I would say the hand-holding is generally like the first hour of a game, and then usually they let go, right? But that
training
first
wheels
hour,
come off, they say,
that first
"Okay,
hour is
there you
very
go."
hand-holdy.
Yep.
But video games are complex and complicated, and the controllers are intimidating if you're not us. If you're someone that only plays a few games a year and you pick up, Dishonored 2 is coming out soon, that'll be a hugely complex game to someone that's not immersed in the vocabulary and lingo of video games.
Absolutely. So yeah, maybe it depends on the game. There's some easy games that are great. I love Kirby games. They're usually very easy, but they're generally also very well put together and a lot of fun. And some games thrive on their difficulty. So you have Dark Souls being the classic contemporary example. Difficulty and the fact that it doesn't handhold you pretty much at all and remains ambiguous is what gives that game its distinct character that people go to it for.
Well, okay, I think it's pretty clear that games used to be a lot harder, right? If you go back to 8 and 16-bit games, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if we play like the majority of games. Like back then, it was possible to see every game and what it is, but it was probably a lot of hard, like just terrible iPhone games, and I don't know.
Well, we can fire up your NES and put it in Bionic Commando, and isn't that harder than your average game today?
I have a pet peeve about people that romanticize the difficulty of old games. Old games had to be difficult because that's what made them long. And I think we've talked about this on Scoop before, but like if you Castlevania, if you play through Castlevania, that game is 25 minutes long, maybe, but it feels like this massive adventure.
And even before that, in the arcades, the odds were stacked against you because they wanted you to put more quarters in.
So it's like the games were short, and so to make a game feel valuable, to make it feel like you got your money's worth, it had to be incredibly hard. And now they have other ways to make you feel like you got your money worth, either through multiplayer, production values, or they're just able to make a game.
Romance scenes.
Yeah.
Golgo 13.
Romance scenes. No, they're just able to make
I know, but in old games we had
you can make a game that lasts a week or two, or longer without having to, fall back on the crutch of difficulty to do that.
No, I agree with you there, Justin, but I want to take that another step. Even then, there was a line of distinction between games that were hard in cheap ways and were very frustrating, and games that were hard.
Ghosts and Goblins.
And then games that were superbly designed and hard. I mean, you mentioned Castlevania. That game is very difficult, but it's very rarely impossible. There's a way around it. And
I don't know if I'm with you on that.
Grim Reaper, Jared.
Ninja Gaiden is cheap as hell, and that's still considered a classic.
But there's a perfect route there. I think what was evil.
Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden changed the rules at stage 6 and sent you back to it. That was what made it awful. But yeah, all that said, there were some real bona fide situations where you look at something like Mega Man, for example, or you mentioned Bionic Commando, where the game, it's tough as nails, but you can get really good at it, and it's not just muscle memory.
Can we all just agree that games need to just have cheat codes again?
Yeah.
Those are so fun.
Oh, you pay for
those.
them.
Fun. Yeah. No. It's so fun after you beat a game to just mess with it.
God bless Rockstar for
was so
putting
fun.
button codes in GTA 5.
I love that.
I do too.
And it's like you could make a game really hard and then just disable achievements, do whatever you want. Like I love that stuff.
That's why I'm very excited for, although it's exactly what you just said, something you have to pay for. The original classic Lara Croft skin for Rise of the Tomb Raider that's coming out later this year.
That
so you
looks
can play through the
really
whole game.
eerie.
It's going to be hilarious.
When she's sitting across a campfire and talking to somebody at an intimate moment, it's like...
That would have been, 10, 20 years ago, something that you unlocked in the game. Now you have to pay for it, which is obnoxious, but I'm still excited to check it out.
A contemporary game that strikes out, and your perfect balance on this, between old game design principles and the way a modern game, like Justin was talking about, might flow and have more content, I think, is Shovel Knight, where you have an 8-bit difficulty that's tuned to not be just extraordinarily frustrating, and you have just a ton of content, a long quest with all kinds of diverse, interesting levels, and then DLC packs, a lot of which are free, that add, you play through the whole game as a different character, or you have dozens of cheat and button codes that change things up. That's a great example. If you haven't played that game, shame on you. Go play it.
I like how difficulty, real high level difficulty in like a 2D platformer thing, just to keep it locked there, has become a feature that's like sells games to certain communities, and like Super Meat Boy and N+, like when those games were coming out, like in Super Meat Boy you could see all the deaths you had, and N+ you could restart so fast and you just go through your same route. Like they really emphasize this kind of 2D evilness.
Well, yeah, like
but
5
they're
seconds
smart
of perfection, like, is all you really need to put together to beat a level. You can do things like I don't consider myself a super great video game player, but I got through all of Super Meat Boy. Because like if you were to see the run with the deaths taken out, it would make me look like a god. But I really only needed to perfect that 4 seconds, to get to the next stage.
And then there's some games that are just more fun when they're easy. Red Faction Guerrilla comes to mind immediately. I don't want to play that game on hard. I want to play that game on easy with my big old hammer and knock things down. And and it's more fun that way. So I think it just depends on the game.
If you want difficulty, there's multiplayer and things of that nature. And there are slidable difficulty levels. But
Call of Duty multiplayer is very difficult for me.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I tend to make, like, if you make a game too easy, you might frustrate some really hardcore players. But if you make a game too hard, then you've made it so 2/3 of your audience are never even going to see what you made. Like, that's the bigger sin.
Yeah.
Too hard is a bigger sin than too easy for me.
Interesting.
How funny was it that with hard games back in the day, the big thing that would like limit me at least from liking them would be like, why did I just run out of continues? And that was like a big deal back then. It was like either lives or continues. But like if a game like, set you back to square one, like the beginning of the game after like trying something, that's what makes Meat Boy and stuff really nice, is that you just try over and over again.
You can just keep going,
That's what but like you did not have that luxury back in the day. Like even if you had lives, you could build up lives. If you ran out of those, you may have 2 continues. If then you ran out of those, like that tier doesn't exist anymore.
Ninja Gaiden 3, man. Just why you would limit the number of continues, and the answer we think is the Japanese version didn't do that, so it was probably for the U.S. rental market to make it harder, so you couldn't beat it on one.
That.
Yeah, because they took it, they added rental. That, they made it harder for the rental. I was like, oh, that's irritating.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, game rental places are like gone entirely.
You got them red boxes though.
Yeah.
Redbox GameFly, I guess.
Yeah, GameFly's still around.
Going to the rental store on Friday night.
You can just watch a video game on YouTube now.
Parents would get like a movie for the weekend or something, and I'd pick out a game and just play it all weekend. It was the best feeling. I love that so much. I miss that.
I totally miss that.
I rented games at Family Video, I think, as recently as like 2013.
We had a place in Iowa City called That's Rentertainment.
Yeah?
Whoa!
That's awesome.
Is it still around?
Because you knew, I think I talked to you about it because you went to college there. So
from Iowa City. Yeah, it was still around as of a few years ago. I don't know if it's still there.
So cool.
They
had a great Nintendo selection.
Yeah.
I think there are more people playing games today than ever. Games are selling more than ever. Games are more popular than ever. So I think that developers were able to figure out that by being a little bit friendlier to the player, they could welcome more people in, bring more people into the fold. So I think overall it's been healthy.
Yeah, and storytelling has become a big part of it. So they want you kind of just to see the end.
Yeah.
See what the story is.
And once you're in there, once you're in the gaming space, if you want a hard game, you can totally find it.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of hard games being made. They're just not the AAA blockbusters.
But there is so much of it sometimes that feels like padding. That's the other sin, man. I hate it when I'm just like, this doesn't need to be here. It offends the editor in me.
Well, there's also, there doesn't need to be, because, The Witness is one of my favorite games in years, and it doesn't have this. But when there's no sort of pressure release valve, or like in case of emergency break glass button, like if you're just like, you're stuck and then you're just stuck friggin' forever.
That's
like,
when IGN Guides comes to your
That's
rescue.
right.
But that sucks. Like, well, I can't beat this guy. Like, I guess I'm just done. Like, you can.
It was worse when it was an adventure game back in the day.
Yeah.
And, like, you just couldn't figure out how to
Yeah.
get the mouse
Yeah.
and the soda can and the clothespin.
Or
to,
you'd
like, solve
screwed
this
yourself
puzzle.
2 hours ago and didn't know it.
And didn't
Oh,
know it. You're
gosh,
sitting there
yeah.
trying to figure things out, and the piece of glass you need is locked behind a door.
Yeah,
at the
so maybe
beginning
I
of the
shouldn't
game.
even use beating a boss as an example because you could presumably practice. But if it's a puzzle game and you don't know what you're supposed to do and there's no hint system or no nothing like that, I don't know. That doesn't
Brutal.
I do think the internet has changed the way games are designed because they
Yeah,
know people can
absolutely.
go and look for things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever since the first internet usage I ever did was looking at Mortal Kombat cheat codes.
Yeah, I went to
Not cheat codes,
n64.com,
fatalities.
which would become IGN64.com to look up the Super Mario 64 Start Guide.
Yeah,
that
that was
wasn't
my-
the very first thing I did, but it was early.
That was my first introduction to IGN, or what would become IGN. We've actually addressed Caleb's second question. He was asking, what are some of the most difficult games you've ever played, and have you finished them? We talked about Ghosts and Goblins,
Yeah.
for sure. I've never even
Jared says he can
close to
beat
beating
it.
that game.
Because, yeah, you can beat Ghosts and Goblins.
I,
Well, I mean,
I said you
you
can
could.
beat it.
Yeah, I can. I'm pretty good at Ghosts and Goblins.
I like
we
this.
have that
Fine,
cartridge?
we're gonna have to.
Yeah, I know. I want
Yeah,
to
we have in the office.
Okay.
separate.
Yeah, I'm pretty
with
good
the
at Ghosts and
manual in
Goblins.
case you need to
Yeah,
refresh.
it'll take a while, but I'll
right.
That's the nice thing. Ghosts and Goblins gives you unlimited continues. You can
Yeah.
brute force your way through Ghosts and
I'm impressed, man.
There's
I could
this-
never beat that game.
There's this pretty cool subculture of like, I don't know whether they have a name, but like these masochistic 2D platformers. People stream them a lot on Twitch. Games like I Want to Be the Guy and things of that nature that are just like they're so over the top, like deliberately mean
Yeah.
and unfair, and like there's no logic to it. You'll hit a block and die, or just random stuff happens. And they're fun to watch, not so fun to play. And they're really active in the speedrunning scene and just the live streaming scene. And it's a thing. I dunk my head into that scene once a year
Yeah.
and just watch the insanity, and then like sort of jump back out. I would
Well,
never
Those
participate.
crazy
in it
Mario
myself.
Maker levels that people were making and beating, that was
Yeah,
really
stuff like
exciting.
that.
What makes I Want to Be the Guy
Yeah,
great is that
that's
it's
what you
funny. Like the ways you die are hilarious. You know, you run under a tree and an apple falls down on you and you die, and the next time you jump over the tree and like an apple falls up and kills
Yeah.
you. Like it's
Yeah.
just it's adorable. Or you're facing Dracula from the end of Symphony of the Night, and he starts doing the "What is a man?" speech. But when he throws the champagne glass, you're
Yeah.
standing in precisely the spot it's going to land,
And it kills
And if
you.
you don't know to move, it just kills you. It's delightful.
Pretty good.
The answer is a miserable pile of secrets.
Ah, that's what a man is. How about you?
I bought that
Have at
game
you.
on the Xbox 360 because it's my second favorite game of all time. Wanted to replay it. They changed the voice acting.
Oh, really?
Is that?
Is it?
They
Is it
tried
all
to
Nolan
improve
North
it?
now?
It's like what they did with Resident Evil.
Well, maybe you can toggle it. There's a version of that with re-recorded English lines that was released in this country.
Whoa. I do
Not on
not
don't
PlayStation.
want. I want the original terrible
Yeah.
dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.